Welcome, Margaret Bartley, Global Editor Director at Bloomsbury, which is the world's leading drama publisher and the home of the award-winning Drama Online. In this series, we're talking about ways of creating an effective learning environment, and this session we're going to focus on video. So, Margaret, can we start by thinking about some of the benefits of using video in teaching English and drama?
Yeah, thanks, Ellie. Well, I think we all know that seeing a play performed really engages students and helps them to better understand the play. After all, a play is written to be performed and seen, not read. And whilst it's great for students to see a live performance in a theatre, that's obviously not always possible if your school isn't close to one, and the costs of seats and travel can be really high. So being able to stream a filmed performance put on by companies like the National Theatre, Shakespeare's Globe, or the Royal Shakespeare Company brings that opportunity to students no matter where they're located. And that's why Drama Online is proving so popular in schools. But apart from the sheer enjoyment of watching a play, I think students' understanding of the plot and so much more is really supported when they can see the actors and hear the dialogue as it's spoken. On top of that, you've got movement, expression, costume, and set, all of which will help them to get to grips with the text much more easily, I think, than just reading it in the classroom. I think seeing a performance can also really help students if they can see the play before they read it, especially for Shakespeare, where they may find the language intimidating or hard to follow. And students can use their logins on Drama Online to access the videos from home. So you don't have to use up lots of valuable classroom time for a whole class viewing if you don't want to.
Yeah, it's such a different experience from just reading the play in class, isn't it? Could you give some examples of how seeing a performance can enhance students' understanding?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, as I say, I think it's the best way for students to see the play as something more than a literary text, something different from the novels and the poetry that they're studying, more than just words on the page. It gives them a really full experience of the play as something live and something performed. And of course, when you see a production, it brings the characters to life. It makes them three-dimensional. They have bodies, they have voices, they come to life off the page. And I think for some students, that can be really quite a gear change. And ideally, it also creates some excitement in the students and greater engagement as well as understanding. It allows them to see how key moments or actions, which may be stage directions or are non-verbal moments, how they are staged. I mean, thinking about some of the films on Drama Online, for example, in A Streetcar Named Desire, how is the assault on Blanche handled? It's a very difficult moment in the play and on stage. Or how is Othello's fit managed? Students may very well have imagined such moments very differently as they read them on the page, but now they've got a visual performance to consider. And I think that seeing a performance of a play that they've already read and studied in the classroom, seeing a production may really change their perception of the play or of specific characters. Also, when you see a play, it shows you who is not speaking at any given moment and how other characters are reacting and behaving. And that's not something the play text often makes explicit when you're reading it. So again, it gives you that three-dimensional experience and live experience. Thinking of another example, some productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream that are available on Drama Online, at the very beginning of the play, they leave Helena on stage to overhear Hermia and her lover when they're planning to elope. And that changes her behaviour, or it could do. Other productions take Helena off the stage at that point, so she doesn't know what's happening. So directors have a choice to make, as there is no stage direction in the text getting Helena off the stage. I think this is a lovely teaching moment in which you can ask your students to consider the character's understanding and her motivation, and to think about the choices the director or the actor has to make in that moment. I think as well that seeing a production brings the staging and the setting to life in a way that reading it simply can't. So students can think about the choices the director and the designer have made and how this might impact the audience. They can think about the costume, the music, the set design, the lighting, with some real live examples to consider again, it's a really good teaching opportunity, I think. And often I know teachers ask students to design a set or a scene as a way of interpreting it. So having live examples to refer to can be really helpful there.
Lovely. And on Drama Online, there is more than one filmed performance of many of the key plays. How do you think that students can benefit from comparing those different performances?
Well, I think that when students can watch different performances of the same play, they can start to really understand the ways in which the text is open to interpretation. We recently added a case study to Drama Online about teaching The Taming of the Shrew, difficult play, particularly for young people, I think. And it takes a few minutes from Act 2, Scene 1, from two different productions available on Drama Online, the 2013 Globe on Screen version and the 2019 Royal Shakespeare Company one. And the Globe production follows quite a traditional line with this production, whereas the RSC one swaps the characters' genders round to investigate issues of power in what becomes a matriarchal society. And the students in this case study were really quite shocked initially by the second production because their expectations were suddenly completely thrown out of the window and subverted. But it also gave them a chance to think more about the impact the production had on its audience, moving beyond the playtext itself. Having access to more than one production of a play, I think it also really helps students to meet the demands of some criteria from the exam boards to compare productions. And it shows them that all plays are there to be interpreted and that each production will be different in so many ways, perhaps cuts that are made to the text or choices about setting and casting. Thinking about Hamlet, for example, where and when the famous to be or not to be soliloquy is performed, you might be surprised how much it moves around from production to production. Drama Online has several productions of Hamlet on offer in various collections from the Globe, the RSC, Stratford, Ontario, and of course we have Maxine Peake's Female Hamlet. There's a lot of Hamlets to explore.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess one thing it demonstrates is how Shakespeare's texts in particular have been interpreted differently over time.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Shakespeare's really rich for this, I think. And I think one of the reasons that Shakespeare's plays have endured is because the plays lend themselves to endless reinvention. New productions use modern or other period settings, they use costume and music differently, and they make decisions about the way dialogue is spoken and how non-verbal communication is used. There's a Globe Theatre production on Drama Online of Love's Labour's Lost that has an actor using British Sign Language, which really shows how actors can communicate and characters differently. And in the RSC collection, there's a lovely production of Much Ado About Nothing, given its alternative title, actually, which is Love's Labour's Won. And that's set just after 1918 and the end of World War I. It's a kind of Downton Abbey setting. It's a very beautiful production too. And the RSC paired that with their production of Love's Labour's Lost, which they set just before war breaks out in 1914. And if you remember, Much Ado About Nothing does start with returning soldiers. So there's a justification for that idea. And I think this setting gives students a really good opportunity to think about how a familiar play changes when you set it in a non-Shakespearean time. And in this case, how those two plays suddenly start speaking to each other in whole new ways. And it's also important to think about modern productions and how differently they cast now. They use much more diverse, colour-conscious casting, which challenges all of our assumptions about a character and their role. But it also enables the contemporary audience to see itself reflected back in the production they're watching. So, for example, on Drama Online, we have the 2016 RSC Hamlet, which starred Papa Esidu in the title role. And he was the first Black actor ever to play Hamlet at the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is really quite a big moment. But you can also see, as I mentioned before, a woman playing Hamlet, Maxine Peake, brilliant performance in the female Hamlet, also available on the platform. And thinking a bit more about diversity and different ways in adapting Shakespeare, the Shakespeare's Globe to Globe collection brings together 30 productions from theatre companies all around the world, performed in their own language, with the translation playing below the video and the subtitles. And students can watch adaptations from Africa, from South America, from Japan, Russia, Spain, Palestine, Israel, France, all around the world, and see very familiar plays performed from different cultures and in different theatre traditions. And I think that could be quite liberating, kind of freeing of the Shakespearean idea of Shakespeare, if you like, as well as some of them are really entertaining and moving. And it makes the plays feel really vibrant and contemporary. And I think that helps students understand how Shakespeare's plays can work as theatre when we don't necessarily understand every word being spoken, how movement and music are central to performance too. And if you think about it, most of us watching a Shakespeare play, we don't necessarily, even in English, understand every word that's being spoken, but we understand what's happening through the performance of that play.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of video is to help a play feel relevant to today's students. And you've mentioned it's a good way of supporting diversity and inclusion in schools. Are there ways in which drama online could support accessibility too, other than simply making the performance available online?
Yeah, definitely. There's really quite easy to use functionality on the platform to help students who may have difficulty hearing or following the speech and the sound in a performance. Many of our performances have closed captions on the screen and a full transcript that can be made to auto scroll in time with the video player. These tools, obviously, they help students with accessibility issues, but I think they also support the wider body of students, many of whom choose to see closed captions on screen in their normal day-to-day viewing of television and film, as well as on all the video-based social media that they're so familiar with. We've had the viewing experience actually on Drama Online described to us as being seamless by some of our users. And it really is quite intuitive and simple to use, but especially so, I think, to today's digitally savvy students.
Well, thank you so much, Margaret. That's been really great. And thank you for sitting down with us today.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ellie.